Alrighty, welcome back to Shock and Shock. I'm your host, Herschel Gillis. Today I'm going to be talking about two obscure short films that, while obscure, also have a bit of a cult following and resulted in the filmmaker being arrested. So, I also want to preface this by saying if you want to check out these films, they're not super hard to find, um, but if you desire to watch them, let me know on Instagram. Just DM me and I'll help you out, okay? I always leave my Instagram down in the description too. So what am I talking about? I'm of course talking about the 2005 Remy Couture directed Inner Depravity parts 1 and 2. The part 1 is about 10 or 11 minutes. I think it's about 10 and a half after you take off the credits. The second one is about that length, maybe 1 minute less, so it's about 9 and a half. So we get about 20 minutes total for both of these. Super short. Um, Storyline, not really one there. These are artistic, extreme horror shorts. The first one and the second one star the same person. I believe it's this Remy Couture himself. Um, the first one is this man is shirtless. He's wearing a mask. He goes into a room. He's looking all crazy and shoots up some heroin. Starts going a little bit out of it, seeing what he did previously to doing that, which involves, of course, murder. Um, the murder of a woman. And there's photos of different women that he's butchered and the ways that he did it. All while this dark, ambient, industrial soundtrack plays. Not really like industrial music, it's like a lot of industrial noises. The second one, same character. This time he's in a sort of like dimly lit, like dungeon, grungy looking, and doesn't do drugs this time. But this one involves a kid. The killer murders someone, and then we see a kid eating part of the body, and then things happen to the kid as well, which is going to offend a lot of people. I'm sure it has certainly shocked me. And by kid I say it's that, like, 14, 15. So, not that that matters. It's a young person. I just want to put that out there that this isn't like the baby scene in a Serbian film. I'll talk about it in a minute though. So first off, what do I like about them? They are. I'm going to talk about them individually because I do have different thoughts about part one and part two. Part one, I like the soundtrack a lot, like the underlying noise. It really adds to the intensity of this. It's very frenetic and like fast paced, weird, and you feel like you're seeing the inside of this killer. Um, the special effects are great. That goes for both of them. Um, Top notch, especially how for these being low budget films, they have incredibly realistic special effects. Look like something out of August Underground. Top notch, zero complaints there. Fantastic looking. The way the killer sort of dispatched people is unique. Um, some of the photos are kind of, that you see like in these flashing are kind of underwhelming, but his main weapon is like this like garden. Um, I forgot what the word is. It's like one of those garden hose that has the rolling like a soil tiller. I think that's sort of what they're called around that. Which is this is bad because I grew up on a farm and I still don't know. He has one of those, except it's like cut and it's this handheld one. Very just like nasty feeling and like homemade. And he has this homemade mask and it's this very real and grimy feeling. Um, the second film um, is much more artistic, I would say. Despite having the same sort of like basic premise to it, it's more artistically shot. The soundtrack for around half, maybe a third. Um, it's like this chorus, like angelic chorus, and it's very dramatic. And there's a lot of different, um, like cinematography. The way that he shoots is kind of varies. It's much different than the first one in that regard. Um, I strongly prefer the second film. I'm going to go over why when I talk about dislikes. Um, I think the second film is honestly one of the better done low budget indie short horror films that I've seen ever. Um, it's very grimy, but this like cellar area that they're in is very like it just looks damp and desolate and gross, and it really fits like the tone of what's going on. Um, it's this very grim feeling. Um, it definitely goes further than the first film as well, while also being more artistic. You hear like the thoughts in this killer's head. Um, the special effects are great as well. The acting in both of these is very solid. Um, you don't get a ton of characterization just because they're so short, and everything sort of like through the actions of the character and the body movements. Um, but it's well done. The lighting is much better in the second one. It feels much less amateurish than the first one, even though it still has that grimy feeling. It's more intentionally so than the first one, I would say. The inclusion of the second character of like this teenager um, also maybe didn't add a depth, but it added another like layer or variety to it. Made it a little bit more interesting. And there's like a juxtaposition of the killer murdering this random woman versus this kid that he's with. Um, and they're very different. And you can see, like, in the body movements and everything, that's much more, like, spiritual for him. It's very dark. Um, and very well done. The second one is great. Dislikes really are only going to apply to the first one. I think Remy Couture really, like, improved from part 1 to 2. Part 1, really, my only complaints, though, would be the pictures that are shown. There may just be too many. I'd rather, like, there be a more focus on the, like, footage that we get where he's performing the murder rather than these, like, photos of a bunch of victims. Maybe we could have them, like, all in, like, one bigger shot versus, like, continuously showing them spliced throughout the film. It's sort of like we get it. He killed more people than this. Um, just, yeah. But definitely remove that. I like the soundtrack in part 2 better, but I do think the first one has, it's a good soundtrack. Um, yeah, I think having them together makes it much more difficult to judge the first one objectively because the second one is just better. Um, but yeah, you should definitely check out both of them though. I highly recommend them. They're not super difficult to find. Everything you're going to find is a bootleg though, obviously. Um, but if you need help finding them, or you want me to help you watch them, either physically or digitally, just let me know, and I will point you in the right direction. Um, I've done so for a couple of people. Just, this is a movie that, or a couple of them, that deserve to be watched. They're very good. I wish they were more widely available, but yeah. There are some people helping out with that. DT Records, that I mentioned in my previous video, who I got the VHS tape from, of the Scare Witch Project, who's a great guy, by the way. Been doing a lot of commissions for him. We're doing a Banana Box real collaboration together. Great guy. Highly recommend checking out DT Records. This is not sponsored. But yeah, he's great. Definitely check them out. But he did a release of Inner Depravity 1 and 2 on VHS a little while ago. So some of you watching this may have even seen that on the VHS tape. So yeah, I like that it's getting a little bit more appreciation as of late. These are also interesting because Remy Couture was, I believe, arrested by the Canadian government. Don't know if he was charged or how long, any of that. I mean, I didn't look super far into this. I can actually look it up now if you guys bear with me. Um, it's just he got into some legal trouble because um, the film was like deemed as being like violating let's see. I actually have it here now, so I don't have to do this. There was a complaint that came first from Interpol in not Australian, I'm sorry. An Austrian pathologist filed the international arrest warrant after viewing the movie because he was unable to guarantee that the image films were not, in fact, real rapes and murders caught on tape. In the end, Mr. Couture was not found not guilty of the crime. Um, I do know he was arrested, though. Most of the articles I read on the subject agree that the case was a dud and shouldn't have been brought to court in the first place. Um, Very similar to August Underground with Fred Vogel being held in customs prison for like 12 hours because the Canadian government or Canadian officials took a copy of August Underground and thought it was obscene or it was real or something. But I think that goes to show that the special effects in these films are definitely top notch and they look very realistic. So definitely a selling point to a lot of people, and I think they're really well done. And we probably won't like you don't see this stuff very often. The most recent example of something that I could even think of that's like this in any way um, would be probably Brandon Terry's Deviant short film. Um, this came out in 2005. I think Deviant came out in. It's been a couple of years, I believe. You should check that out too. Watch my video on that, but just rambling at this point. Check out Inner Depravity. Message me on Instagram if you want to copy in one way or another. And as always, I've been your host, Herschel Gillis, signing off for today. Zero thoughts, zero editing, zero planning, and zero brain cells. I'll be back tomorrow for day 25 of the 31 days of horror reviews. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. Keep notifications on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks.